How a 23-year-old caregiver granted an 85-year-old billionaire's last wish before his death. She was just a 23-year-old caregiver trying to make ends meet, until the billionaire she cared for whispered one final wish that would change her life forever. Before we begin, please subscribe, like, comment and share. I will be glad if this story goes as far as United States of America, Australia, and even the United Kingdom. I pray the good Lord protect and preserve you all and your families. Amen. Let's begin. The rain hammered against the tall windows of Hartford Manor as Chen clutched her worn leather portfolio, water dripping from her second-hand coat onto the marble floor. She had taken 3 buses to get here, each one delayed by the storm, and now she stood in the grand entrance hall of the estate, feeling smaller than she ever had in her 23 years. Miss Chen. A crisp voice cut through her anxious thoughts. A woman in her 50s, dressed in an immaculate grey suit, appeared from a side corridor. Her expression was professional but not unkind. I'm Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, Mr. Hartford's estate manager. Thank you for coming on such short notice, and in this weather no less. Maya straightened her shoulders, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. Thank you for seeing me, Mrs. Whitmore. I really appreciate the opportunity. The estate manager's eyes swept over Maya with an assessing gaze that made her acutely aware of every frayed thread on her coat, every scuff on her shoes. But Maya had learned long ago that appearances weren't everything. She had something more valuable than designer clothes or fancy credentials. She had genuine compassion, hard-earned experience, and a desperate need for this job. Let's speak in the library, Mrs. Whitmore said, gesturing down a long hallway lined with oil paintings that probably cost more than Maya's entire education. I must be frank with you, Miss Chen. We've interviewed 47 candidates for this position. Mr. Hartford is particular about who he allows into his inner circle. Maya's heart sank. 47 candidates. What chance did she have? She was fresh out of nursing school, still carrying student debt that kept her up at night, working 3 part-time jobs just to cover her rent and send money home to her mother. Her resume was thin compared to what the wealthy expected. But she had learned in her years of struggle that sometimes showing up was half the battle. The library was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked like they belonged in a museum. A fire crackled in an ornate fireplace, and through the windows, despite the storm, Maya could see manicured gardens stretching into the distance. Please, sit. Mrs. Whitmore gestured to a leather chair across from a massive oak desk. As Maya sat, she noticed the photograph on the desk, a much younger man with striking blue eyes and a confident smile, standing next to a beautiful woman in front of what looked like a newly constructed building. That's Mr. Hartford in 1975, Mrs. Whitmore said, following Maya's gaze. The day Hartford Industries completed its first major project. The woman beside him is Catherine, his late wife. She passed 12 years ago. I'm sorry for his loss, Maya said softly, and she meant it. She had seen enough grief in her clinical rotations to recognize the weight of it. Mrs. Whitmore's expression softened slightly. Tell me, Miss Chen, why do you want this position? And please, be honest. I've heard every version of I want to help people that exists. I'm looking for something real. Maya took a deep breath. This was a shot, and she wouldn't waste it with platitudes. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. I was 16 when she stopped recognizing my face. I watched my mother care for her for 3 years, watched her sacrifice everything, her job, her savings, her own health. I couldn't do much then except be there, hold my grandmother's hand, read to her. But I learned something in those 3 years. I learned that at the end of life, what matters isn't the medical interventions or the medications. It's the moments, the small kindnesses, the human connection. I became a nurse because I wanted to be the person who could provide both the medical care and the emotional support that people need when they're most vulnerable. She paused, meeting Mrs. Whitmore's eyes directly. I also need this job because I have $50,000 in student loans, a mother who's working herself to exhaustion at a factory, and a rent payment due in 12 days that I'm not sure I can make. I won't lie to you and pretend I'm doing this purely out of altruism. But I promise you this, every patient I've cared for, I've treated like they were my own family. Rich or poor, difficult or easy. That's not something I turn on and off depending on the paycheck. The silence that followed felt eternal. Maya wondered if she'd been too honest, too raw. But she was tired of pretending to be someone she wasn't. Mrs. Whitmore's expression remained neutral. Mr. Hartford is 85 years old. He has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors give him 3 to 6 months, possibly less. He's refused aggressive treatment. He's chosen palliative care only, which means he'll be spending his final months here, at the estate. He's wealthy beyond measure, Miss Chen. This estate is just one of 6 properties he owns worldwide. Hartford Industries is worth billions. He's been featured in Forbes, consulted with presidents, built an empire from absolutely nothing. She leaned forward, her voice taking on a harder edge. He's also stubborn, demanding, and can be incredibly difficult. His illness has made him angry at the world. He's driven away every caregiver we've hired in the past 4 months. The longest anyone lasted was 3 weeks. He's not a sweet old grandfather who'll appreciate your kindness. He's a man who's built his life on control, and now he's losing control of his own body. That terrifies him, and terror makes him lash out. Maya absorbed this information, her mind already working through the implications. What happened to the previous caregivers? Why did they leave? The first one he accused of stealing, which was unfounded. The second he claimed was incompetent, though her credentials were impeccable. The third couldn't handle his verbal outbursts. The fourth, fifth, and sixth. Mrs. Whitmore sighed. He simply refused to let them care for him. Locked them out of his suite, refused his medications, wouldn't eat if they prepared his meals. One of them quit after he threw a book at the wall near her head during an argument about his medication schedule. But you keep hiring people, Maya observed. Why? Because beneath the anger and the stubbornness, there's a dying man who's terrified and alone, Mrs. Whitmore said quietly. And because I made a promise to his late wife that I would ensure he was cared for, no matter how difficult he made it. Catherine was my dear friend. I won't break that promise. Maya felt a surge of respect for this woman who clearly cared deeply for her employer despite his difficult behavior. What would you need from me, if I took this position? Patience. Professionalism. Thick skin. The ability to not take his moods personally. Medical competence, obviously, but more than that, the ability to see past his anger to the fear underneath. Mrs. Whitmore pulled out a folder. The salary is $200,000 annually, plus full benefits, room, and board here at the estate, and a completion bonus of $500,000 if you stay until the end. Maya's breath caught. That was more money than she'd ever imagined earning, certainly more than any entry-level nursing position she'd seen. It was enough to pay off her loans, secure her mother's retirement, change her entire life. But the weight of that completion bonus hung heavy in the air. It was payment for seeing a man through his death. For being there in those final, difficult moments. There's something else, Mrs. Whitmore continued. Mr. Hartford has been speaking about a wish. Something he wants to do before he dies. He won't tell anyone what it is, says he'll only discuss it with the right person. Perhaps he'll tell you. Perhaps not. But if he does, and if you can help him achieve it, there would be an additional amount transferred to you. A substantial amount. How substantial? Maya asked, her practical side asserting itself. Substantial enough that you'd never have to worry about money again. But Miss Chen, I want to be clear, that's not why we are hiring you. We are hiring you to provide excellent end-of-life care. If he never mentions this wish, if it turns out to be nothing, your job remains the same and the compensation remains generous. Do you understand? Maya nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I can do this? Be honest. I know I'm young. I know I don't have years of experience. Do you think I have a chance? Mrs. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment, studying Maya's face. I think the last thing Richard Hartford needs is another polished professional who treats him like a difficult case study. I think he needs someone real. Someone who's known struggle and isn't afraid of messy emotions. Someone who won't quit at the first sign of difficulty. She smiled slightly. Besides, you're the first candidate who's asked me what I think. Everyone else has been busy trying to impress me with their credentials. That counts for something. When would you need me to start? Tonight, if possible. His current situation is precarious. He's refusing his pain medications, hasn't eaten in 2 days, and won't let anyone into his suite except for me, and even I'm only tolerated for brief periods. Maya thought of her tiny apartment, her 3 part-time jobs, the pile of bills on her counter. She thought of her mother's voice on the phone last night, tired but trying to sound cheerful. She thought of her grandmother's hand in hers, those final peaceful moments before she passed. I'll need to make some calls, arrange coverage for my other jobs, pack some things. But yes, I can start tonight. Mrs. Whitmore's expression betrayed a flash of relief. Thank you, Miss Chen. I won't pretend this will be easy. But I have a feeling about you. She stood, extending her hand. Let's go meet Richard Hartford. The walk to Richard Hartford's suite felt like a journey to another world. They climbed a grand staircase, turned down a corridor lined with more priceless art, and finally stopped in front of a set of double doors made of dark mahogany. Mrs. Whitmore knocked gently. Richard. It's Eleanor. I have someone I'd like you to meet. Go away. The voice from inside was hoarse but still commanding. I told you, I don't want another nursemaid hovering over me like I'm already dead. Her name is Maya Chen, and she's very patient with stubborn old men who don't know what's good for them. I know exactly what's good for me, Eleanor, and it's being left alone. Maya surprised herself by speaking up. Mr. Hartford? I'm the girl who's going to help you with your wish. But I can't do that if you won't let me in. Silence. Long enough that Maya wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Then, a click as the lock turned. You've got 5 minutes, came the voice from inside. And close the door behind you. Eleanor, you stay out there. Mrs. Whitmore gave Maya an encouraging nod and whispered, Good luck. Maya pushed open the door and stepped inside. The suite was magnificent. High ceilings, antique furniture, a 4-poster bed that looked like it belonged in a castle. But what struck Maya most was the man sitting in a wheelchair by the window, silhouetted against the storm-dark sky. Even hunched and diminished by illness, Richard Hartford had a commanding presence. She approached slowly, giving him space, and sank into a chair across from him without being invited. It was a calculated risk, treating his space with familiarity rather than deference. Richard Hartford's eyes met hers, and Maya understood immediately why he'd been so successful. Even hollowed by illness, those blue eyes were sharp, intelligent, and used to seeing through people's facades. You're just a child, he said, his voice carrying disapproval but also something else, maybe curiosity. I'm 23. Old enough to know that dying angry is no way to go. His eyebrows rose. Bold words for someone who wants a job. You want honest. I'll give you honest. I need this job desperately. But you need someone who isn't afraid of you more than I need the money. Because here's what I think, Mr. Hartford. You're not angry at the caregivers. You're angry at the cancer. At your body for betraying you. At the world for continuing to spin while you're forced to stop. And you're taking it out on people who are just trying to help because they're the only ones here to take it. Get out. No. Maya stayed seated. You said I had 5 minutes. I've used 1. You want to throw me out, you'll have to actually throw me out, and I don't think you have the strength for that right now. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even amusement. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. Story of my life. Maya leaned forward. I mentioned a wish. Mrs. Whitmore said you've been talking about something you want to do before you die. What is it? What makes you think I'd tell you? Because you're running out of time, and whatever it is, you can't do it alone. And because I think you're tired of people tiptoeing around you like you're already a ghost. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to treat you like what you are, a living person with something left to do. Richard was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the arm of his wheelchair. Outside, thunder rumbled. Tell me about yourself. The real story, not the polished version you tell in interviews. So Maya did. She told him about growing up with a single mother who worked 2 jobs. About her grandmother's illness and how it had shaped her career choice. About the student loans that kept her up at night and the 3 part-time jobs she'd been juggling. About the fear that she'd never break free from the cycle of financial struggle that had defined her family for generations. And now you see me as your ticket out, Richard said when she finished. I see you as a person who's dying and deserves to die with dignity and without being alone. The money is life-changing for me, yes. I won't lie about that. But Mr. Hartford, I could go work at any hospital and make enough to survive. I'm here because I think you and I can help each other. You give me financial security, and I give you the kind of care that treats you like a human being, not a patient to be managed. And the wish. Tell me what it is, and I'll move heaven and earth to make it happen. Richard studied her face for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right, Maya Chen. I'll tell you. But not today. First, I need to know if you can handle the day-to-day reality of caring for a dying man. If you can last a week without running away like the others, then we'll talk about my wish. Deal. Maya stood and extended her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Richard shook it. His grip was weak, but his gaze was strong. Don't make me regret this, he said. Don't make me regret it either, Maya replied with a slight smile. As she left the room, Maya felt the weight of what she'd just committed to. This wasn't going to be easy. Richard Hartford was every bit as difficult as Mrs. Whitmore had warned. But there was something else there too, a depth, an intelligence, a spark that hadn't been extinguished despite everything he was facing. She had a week to prove herself. And somehow, she knew that week would change everything. Maya's temporary room in the staff quarters was more luxurious than anywhere she'd ever lived. Private bathroom, queen-size bed, a sitting area with a view of the gardens. It was after 9 p.m. when she finally finished unpacking the few belongings she'd managed to grab from her apartment, and she was exhausted. But her first night shift was about to begin. Mrs. Whitmore had provided her with detailed notes about Richard's care routine, medication schedule, dietary restrictions, and emergency protocols. Maya studied them until her eyes blurred, committing everything to memory. At midnight, she was due to check on him, administer his pain medication if he'd accept it, and ensure he was comfortable for the night. She knocked softly on his door at exactly midnight. Mr. Hartford? It's Maya. I'm here for your midnight check. I'm fine. Go away. I can't do that. It's literally my job to check on you. I don't need checking on like some infant. Maya tried the door, unlocked. She pushed it open to find Richard still in his wheelchair by the window, now staring out at the darkness. The storm had passed, leaving a clear, star-filled sky. You're supposed to be in bed, Maya said gently, approaching him. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Which, according to my doctors, should be any day now. The doctors said 3 to 6 months. That's not any day now. That's time. She moved to stand beside him, looking out at the same view. Couldn't sleep. Sleep is difficult these days. The pain keeps me awake. The medications make me groggy and confused. I hate that feeling, like I'm losing my mind along with my body. Maya understood. She'd seen this before, the delicate balance between pain management and mental clarity that palliative care patients struggled with. What if we tried a lower dose? Enough to take the edge off the pain but not enough to fog your mind. I suggested that. The previous caregivers said it wasn't protocol. I'm not interested in protocol. I'm interested in your quality of life. Let's try it and see how you feel. Maya retrieved his medication, halved the dose, and brought it to him with a glass of water. But you have to promise me something. If the pain becomes unbearable, you'll tell me, and we'll adjust. Richard took the medication, watching her with those sharp eyes. Why are you really here, Maya? Young woman like you should be out living life, not watching an old man die. Maybe this is my life. Ever consider that? There are easier ways to make a living. Easier, sure, but would they matter as much? Maya pulled up a chair beside him. Can I tell you something? When my grandmother was dying, there was one nurse, Angela was her name, who made all the difference. Not because she was the most skilled or had the most experience, but because she saw my grandmother, saw the woman she'd been, not just the patient she'd become. She'd sit with her, tell her about her day, treat her like a person worth talking to even when my grandmother couldn't always respond. I can still respond just fine, Richard grumbled. I know. That's not my point. My point is that Angela taught me that this work isn't about the medical tasks. Those are just the baseline. It's about connection. About helping someone navigate the hardest journey they'll ever take with dignity and companionship. She paused. My grandmother's last words were about Angela. She said, "Thank her for seeing me. I want to be that for someone. Maybe that someone is you." Richard was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher, more vulnerable. Catherine, my wife, she was like that. She saw people. Really saw them. I was always the businessman, the strategist, the one making the tough decisions. She was the heart. When she died, it was like the best part of me died with her. "Tell me about her," Maya said softly. And he did. For the next hour, Richard talked about Catherine, how they'd met when he was just a young man with big dreams and no money, how she'd believed in him when no one else did, how she'd been his partner in every sense of the word. He talked about the empire they'd built together, the charities she'd championed, the family they'd hoped to have but never could. "We tried for years to have children," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "It just never happened. Catherine said I was her family, and that was enough. But I wonder sometimes if things would have been different if we'd had kids. Someone to carry on the legacy. Someone to care about what happens to everything we built." "You have people who care," Maya pointed out. "Mrs. Whitmore clearly cares deeply about you. Eleanor's been with us for 32 years. She was Catherine's closest friend besides me. She stayed out of loyalty and love, not because of any blood tie." He turned his wheelchair slightly to face Maya. "Do you know what it's like to build something enormous and realize at the end that there's no one to leave it to who'll understand what it meant? Hartford Industries will continue, of course. I have a board, executives, all the machinery of a successful corporation. But it'll just be a business to them. Not a dream that started in a tiny apartment with a brilliant woman and a stubborn man who refused to accept that the world had limits." Maya heard the grief in his words, the loneliness. "Maybe that's where your wish comes in," she suggested carefully. "Whatever it is you want to do before you die." Richard's expression shifted, became guarded again. "Maybe. We'll see if you last the week, Maya Chen." "I'll last," she said with quiet confidence. "Now, let's get you into bed. You need rest, even if sleep is difficult." To her surprise, Richard didn't argue. He allowed her to help him into bed, and though he was clearly weakened by his illness, there was still a dignity about him that Maya respected. She adjusted his pillows, made sure he had water within reach, and dimmed the lights. "Maya," he called as she reached the door. "Yes." "Thank you. For listening." "Anytime, Mr. Hartford. That's what I'm here for." As Maya returned to her room, she felt the exhaustion of the day catching up with her. But beneath the fatigue was something else, a sense of purpose. This was exactly where she was supposed to be. The first week was a test of wills. Richard Hartford was determined to prove that he didn't need a caregiver, and Maya was equally determined to prove that she wasn't going anywhere. On day 2, Richard refused breakfast, lunch, and dinner, insisting he wasn't hungry. Maya didn't argue or plead. She simply sat with him during mealtimes and ate her own food, talking casually about anything except his need to eat. By day 3, he was begrudgingly accepting small portions, though he complained about everything from the temperature of the soup to the way the bread was cut. On day 4, he tried to send her away again, claiming he'd called Mrs. Whitmore to fire her. Maya called his bluff, She'd already checked with Eleanor, who confirmed that Richard had made no such call. "You're annoyingly persistent," Richard said. "Thank you," Maya replied cheerfully. "I'll take that as a compliment." On day 5, Richard had a bad night. The pain broke through despite the medications, and Maya sat with him through the worst of it, adjusting his position, applying warm compresses, talking him through breathing exercises she'd learned in her training. When the pain finally subsided and he drifted into an exhausted sleep, Maya allowed herself to cry quietly in the bathroom. This part never got easier, watching someone suffer and being able to provide only limited relief. But she composed herself, washed her face, and returned to his bedside. This was the job. This was why it mattered. On day 6, Richard was withdrawn, processing the reality of how his illness was progressing. Maya didn't push him to talk. She simply stayed present, reading a book in the corner of his room while he stared out the window. Around noon, he spoke without preamble. "My father was a factory worker. Died at 52 from a heart attack on the floor of the plant where he'd worked for 30 years. They gave my mother a $200 death benefit and replaced him the next day. I swore I'd never be replaceable. I'd build something so significant that the world would have to acknowledge I existed." Maya closed her book, giving him her full attention. "I was 17 when he died. Quit school, took 3 jobs to support my mother and younger sister. Met Catherine when I was 24. She was working as a secretary at one of the places I did janitorial work. She saw me reading business journals during my breaks, asked me about my dreams. Most people laughed when I said I wanted to build skyscrapers. She didn't. She said, 'Then you'll build skyscrapers.'" He turned his wheelchair to face Maya. "We started Hartford Industries in 1968 with $5,000 we'd saved working extra shifts and skipping meals. Our first project was a small office building in Connecticut. Nothing fancy. But it was ours. And it didn't fall down." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. 57 years later, Hartford Industries has built some of the most iconic structures in the world. The Millennium Tower in Singapore. The Glass Palace in Dubai. The Hartford Center in Manhattan. "I've seen the Hartford Center," Maya said. "It's beautiful." Catherine designed the lobby. She wasn't an architect formally, but she had an eye for beauty, for how spaces should feel. Every Hartford building has something she influenced. A detail in the design, a choice of materials, an artistic element. It was always a partnership. You must miss her terribly. Every single day for 12 years. His voice was raw. "And now I'm dying, and I'm going to see her again, and I'm terrified." Maya moved closer. "Terrified? I thought you'd want to be reunited." "I do. But what if I've disappointed her? What if I wasted the last 12 years? What if she looks at who I've become, this angry, bitter old man, and doesn't recognize the person she loved?" "Mr. Hartford," Maya said gently, "grief changes us. Loss changes us. Facing our own mortality changes us. But the core of who we are doesn't disappear. You're not just an angry old man. You're a man who's frightened and sad and dealing with impossible circumstances. If Catherine loved you, and it's clear she did, she understood all of you. The brilliant parts and the difficult parts." Richard's eyes were wet. Maya had never seen him cry before. "I haven't cried since her funeral," he said, as if reading her thoughts. "Couldn't afford to. Had to keep the company running, keep moving forward. But lately, it feels like all I do is cry or rage or both." "Then cry. Rage. Feel whatever you need to feel. I'm not going anywhere." And he did. For the first time in 12 years, Richard Hartford allowed himself to fully grieve, not just for Catherine, but for the life they'd built together, for the time they'd never have, for the ending that was rushing toward him with cruel inevitability. Maya sat with him through it all, offering tissues, a steady presence, and the simple gift of witnessing his pain without trying to fix it or minimize it. When the storm of emotion finally passed, Richard looked exhausted but somehow lighter. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said. "I'm honored you trusted me with it," Maya replied honestly. "It's been a week," Richard observed. You've lasted longer than I expected. Does that mean you'll tell me about your wish? Richard wheeled himself to his desk and pulled out an old, worn photograph. He handed it to Maya. The photo showed a young boy, maybe 7 or 8, standing in front of a small, run-down house. That's me, Richard said. That house is where I grew up. It's in a small town in upstate New York called Riverside. Population then was about 2,000. Probably not much more now. It's still there? Maya asked, studying the photo. I don't know. I haven't been back in 65 years. 65 years. Why not? Richard's expression became complicated. Shame, regret, old pain surfacing. When I left at 17, I told myself I'd never go back to that life. That place represented everything I was running from. Poverty, powerlessness, being invisible. I wanted to erase that version of myself. So I did. Changed everything about myself. Lost the accent, changed my clothes, my mannerisms, everything. I reinvented myself so thoroughly that the boy in that photo might as well have been a different person. And now? Maya prompted gently. Now I'm dying, and I realize I left something behind in Riverside. Something important. He took a shaky breath. When I was 16, there was a girl. Lily Brennan. We were going to get married after I turned 18. Had it all planned out. We'd move to the city, start our lives together. She believed in my dreams just like Catherine did later, maybe even more. She was my first love. Maya sensed where this was going, could feel the weight of old regret in his words. Then my father died, and everything fell apart. I had to take care of my family. Lily and I tried to make it work long distance after I moved to the city for better job opportunities, but... He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I got too caught up in survival, then in ambition. I stopped writing, stopped calling, just disappeared from her life. She deserved better than that. She deserved a proper goodbye, an explanation, something. But I was too much of a coward to face her after abandoning her like that. And you want to go back now, Maya said, understanding dawning. You want to see her again. That's your wish. I want to apologize, Richard said simply. I want to tell her I'm sorry for how I treated her. I want her to know that she mattered, that what we had mattered, even though I threw it away. And I want to see Riverside one more time, make peace with where I came from before I die. I've been trying to hire investigators to find her, but so far they've come up empty. She might have moved away. She might have died. Hell, she might not want to see me even if we could find her. But I have to try. Maya looked at the photograph again, at the young boy with dreams in his eyes standing in front of a house that represented both shame and origin. Mr. Hartford, this is a beautiful wish. Why didn't you tell the other caregivers? Because it requires going back there. Physically going back. The doctors say I shouldn't travel, that it could accelerate my decline. Mrs. Whitmore thinks I'm being foolish, risking my final months for what might be a wild goose chase. The previous caregivers agreed with her. They all said I should stay here, stay comfortable, accept what is. But I don't want to die with this regret. I don't want Lily to think she didn't matter. And I don't want to die as someone who was ashamed of where he came from. Then we'll go, Maya said decisively. We'll find a way to make it happen safely. I'll coordinate with your doctors, hire whatever medical equipment we need, plan the trip carefully. But Mr. Hartford, you deserve this. You deserve closure and peace and the chance to honor your past. You really think we can do this? I think we have to try. Will it be easy? No. Will there be risks? Yes. But some things are worth the risk. And this clearly is for you. Richard studied her face, and Maya saw hope there, fragile but real. You'd really do this? Take this on? That's why I'm here, isn't it? To help you with your last wish. So yes, absolutely. We'll make this happen. For the first time since Maya had met him, Richard Hartford smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his face. Catherine would have liked you, he said. She would have said you have a good heart. I would have liked to meet her, Maya replied. She sounds like an incredible woman. She was. And Maya, thank you. For listening. For not judging me for my past mistakes. For caring enough to make this foolish old man's wish come true. It's not foolish. It's human. And I'm honored to help. As Maya left his room that night, her mind was already working through the logistics. This wouldn't be simple. They'd need medical clearance, portable equipment, a support team, transportation arranged, and most critically, they'd need to find Lily Brennan. But Maya had meant what she said. Some things were worth the risk. And giving Richard Hartford the chance to make peace with his past, to apologize to someone he'd hurt, to reconcile with his origins before he died, that was definitely worth it. She had no idea, as she fell asleep that night, just how much this journey would change not just Richard's life, but her own as well. The next morning, Maya requested a meeting with Mrs. Whitmore. The estate manager's office was elegant and organized, much like the woman herself. Eleanor looked up from her desk as Maya entered, her expression curious. You wanted to see me? Is everything all right with Richard? He told me about his wish, Maya said without preamble. He wants to go back to Riverside, his hometown. And he wants to find Lily Brennan, a woman he was involved with 65 years ago. Eleanor's expression shifted to dismay. Oh no. Maya, I was hoping he wouldn't burden you with that impossible idea. It's not impossible. It's challenging, yes, but not impossible. The doctors have explicitly advised against travel. His condition is deteriorating. The stress of a trip, the unfamiliar environment, the emotional weight of revisiting painful memories, it could kill him days or weeks earlier than if he stayed here in comfort. Maya sat down across from Eleanor. I understand your concerns. But with respect, Mrs. Whitmore, isn't the point of palliative care to prioritize quality of life over quantity? If Mr. Hartford has 3 months left, would we rather he spend them comfortable but filled with regret, or slightly less comfortable but at peace? This isn't just slight discomfort. This is significant medical risk, which we can mitigate. We can bring portable oxygen, pain medication, all his care equipment. I can be with him constantly to monitor his condition. We can plan carefully, have emergency protocols in place. Eleanor sighed deeply. Maya, I understand your compassion, I truly do. But I've known Richard for over 3 decades. I made a promise to Catherine to keep him safe. And I'm promising you I will. But safety isn't just physical. It's emotional and spiritual too. Please, trust me on this. After a long silence, Eleanor finally nodded. I'll support you. But if at any point his health deteriorates dangerously, we abort the mission immediately. Agreed. Agreed. Over the next 3 weeks, Maya worked tirelessly. She hired a private investigator, coordinated with Richard's medical team, and planned every detail of the trip. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon. The investigator had found Lily Brennan, now Lily Morrison. She was 83 years old, widowed, living in the same small town of Riverside in a modest home near the center of town. When Maya told Richard, he wept with relief and terror. What if she hates me? What if she won't see me? Then at least you tried, Maya said gently. But I reached out to her, Mr. Hartford. I explained who I was and that you wanted to visit. She said yes. She said she'd wondered about you for 65 years. The journey to Riverside took 4 hours by private medical transport. Maya sat beside Richard the entire time, monitoring his vital signs, managing his pain, and listening as he shared more stories about his youth. He pointed out the window as they entered the small town, his eyes filled with wonder and sadness at how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. Lily's home was a small white cottage with a garden full of late-blooming flowers. Maya helped Richard into his wheelchair, and together they approached the front door. Before they could knock, it opened. Lily Morrison stood there, smaller than Maya had imagined, with silver hair and kind eyes that filled with tears the moment she saw Richard. Richie, she whispered, using a name Maya had never heard. You came back. "I'm so sorry, Lily," Richard said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for leaving you. For disappearing. For being a coward who didn't deserve you." Lily stepped forward and took his weathered hands in hers. "Oh, Richie. I forgave you decades ago. I understood. Life got complicated, didn't it?" They talked for hours. Lily shared that she'd married a good man, had 3 children, taught elementary school for 40 years, and lived a happy life. But she'd never forgotten her first love, the ambitious boy with impossible dreams. "I followed your career," she admitted. "Read about you in the papers. I was so proud of you, Richie. You did exactly what you said you'd do. You built something magnificent." "But I lost something magnificent in the process," Richard said, looking at her with deep regret. "I lost my way. I lost sight of what mattered." "No," Lily said firmly. "You found your path. It wasn't the path we planned together, but it was yours. And from what Maya tells me, you built a beautiful life with a woman who loved you deeply. That's not losing your way. That's living." Maya stood back, witnessing this moment of grace and forgiveness, feeling tears stream down her own face. Richard asked Maya to take him to his childhood home. It was still standing, barely, abandoned and weathered by time. They sat in front of it for a long time, Richard staring at the structure that had once contained all his pain and all his dreams. "I'm not ashamed anymore," he finally said. "This house, this town, that scared boy, they're all part of who I became. The good and the bad. I can't erase them, and I don't want to anymore." "Catherine would be proud of you," Maya said softly. "I think she would be. I think she'd be proud that I finally found the courage to come back. To face Lily. To face myself." They returned to Hartford Manor 3 days later. Richard was exhausted but at peace in a way Maya had never seen. He'd made his peace with Lily, with Riverside, with his past. But the journey had taken its toll. His condition declined rapidly over the next 2 weeks. Maya never left his side. She managed his pain, read to him, held his hand through the difficult moments, and celebrated the good moments with him. Mrs. Whitmore visited daily, sharing memories of Catherine and better times. One evening, as the sun set over the estate, Richard called Maya to his bedside. "I've changed my will," he said weakly. "Hartford Industries will continue under the board's management, but I'm establishing the Catherine Hartford Foundation for End-of-Life Care. You'll oversee it. There's $50 million endowed to fund compassionate care for dying patients, regardless of their ability to pay. No one should die alone or in pain because they can't afford care." "Mr. Hartford, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll honor Catherine's memory by making sure others receive the kind of care you've given me. Say you'll train other caregivers to see their patients, really see them, the way you saw me." "I promise," Maya said, crying. "I promise I will." "Good." He smiled weakly. "You gave me the greatest gift, Maya. You gave me peace. You helped me make things right before the end. That's worth more than all the buildings I ever built." Richard Hartford died on a quiet Tuesday morning, 3 months and 4 days after Maya had first walked into his suite. He passed peacefully, with Maya holding one hand and Mrs. Whitmore holding the other, surrounded by photographs of Catherine and memories of a life fully lived. At his funeral, Lily Morrison travelled from Riverside to pay her respects. She hugged Maya and whispered, "Thank you for bringing him home to himself before he left us all." The reading of the will revealed that Richard had left Maya $5 million personally, with a note, "For the young woman who taught an old man that it's never too late to make things right. Build your own dreams now, Maya. You've earned them." But more than the money, Maya had gained something infinitely more valuable, the understanding that her calling was exactly right. That being present for someone in their final journey, helping them find peace and closure, was work that mattered deeply. 1 year later, Maya stood in the lobby of the first Catherine Hartford Compassionate Care Center, watching as caregivers she'd trained worked with terminal patients and their families. The center provided free end-of-life care, emotional support, and dignity to anyone who needed it. Her mother had retired from the factory and now volunteered at the center twice a week. Maya's student loans were paid off. But more importantly, she was living a life of purpose and meaning. She often thought of Richard Hartford, the difficult, brilliant, wounded man who taught her that everyone deserves compassion, especially in their darkest hours. That everyone has a story worth hearing. That it's never too late to make amends, to face your past, to choose peace over pride. On her desk was the photograph Richard had shown her that first week. The young boy in front of the rundown house, full of impossible dreams. Beside it was a photo from Riverside, of Richard and Lily holding hands and smiling, two old friends who'd finally made peace with the past. Maya had framed both pictures with a quote from Richard's final letter to her. "The buildings I designed will eventually crumble. The money will be spent. But kindness, real, genuine kindness, that echoes forever. Thank you for showing me that before I ran out of time. You didn't just grant my last wish. You gave me back my humanity." Every day, Maya worked to pass that gift forward, one patient at a time, one family at a time, one moment of compassionate care at a time. Because in the end, that's what mattered most, not how much wealth you accumulated or how many buildings bore your name, but whether you'd truly seen people, truly connected, truly loved. Richard Hartford had learned that lesson. And through him, so had Maya. And that was the greatest legacy of all. Thanks for watching. If you like this story, please do not forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share.